Morning everyone, welcome to the press conference. I think it's virtually 2 months to the day I was appointed administrator of the club, so I thought it was appropriate to give you an update as we progress to try and find a rescue for the club. First, I'd like to thank you guys. I did ask at the last conference that you gave us a bit of breathing space, and you've been true to your word, so I do appreciate that. One thing I'd just like to clarify, I'm aware of there's been a lot of chat by various parties that administration didn't need to happen. I just want to be crystal clear on that the club was only surviving prior to my appointment through funds being introduced by Alan Savage, and in the absence of Alan, the club had no other working capital to go forward. So to say that administration shouldn't have happened is factually incorrect. I'm aware that there was efforts to convert loans to equity or write loans off. They would have improved the balance sheet, but frankly they don't put cash into the business. So administration was a result of cash flow insolvency. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'd also like to thank the staff at the club. Far too many to name people individually, but the attitude and desire of the staff to help the club, the commitment to the club has been amazing, and I can't stress how much the administration team appreciate that. Also great to see the team picking up points and continuing to strive to move away from the playoff place, which is great to see. Had a meeting with the coaching team this morning, so they're all very enthusiastic and very pleased, as we all are, as to how things are going. In terms of the current position, as I mentioned at the last press conference, the club has a significant funding gap to the end of the season. Pleased to advise that Alan Savage has again agreed to support this, which gives us stability and a period of time to pursue the sale. The commitment from Alan is significant. I don't think that should be underestimated, and again I would encourage the local community to try and come forward and help in whatever small way you can to assist Alan in the funding requirement. What I would say is we're seeing far more activity in and around the club. For example, the hospitality for the Cove game on the 28th is sold out, which is great to see. And I would again appeal to the fans of the community just to support and promote the club and everything that we're doing as we try and secure as much revenue as we can for the club. Moving on to the sale process, we still have significant interest in the club, around 15 parties. With discussions ongoing, we had a call on Thursday with a potential investor, which went well. They've asked for further information. Interest is both UK and worldwide. Just in terms of the sale process, from a buyer's perspective, there's two parts for them to consider. One is the funding to buy the assets and allow me to promote a credible company voluntary arrangement. And the second bit is that they need to understand what the funding is going to be like for the club going forward as it strives to move away from a loss-making position. So parties have asked if they could see budgets beyond the end of this season. So we are preparing them, and they'll be ready in early January to present to interested parties. So we'll continue those discussions in January. I'm still very optimistic, very pleased with the interest we've still got. We're having very sensible and credible discussions. Obviously my desire is to try and conclude a sale as quickly as possible, but it has to be a transaction that works for everyone. And thanks to Alan's support, we do have breathing space to iron out some obstacles that we're now facing, which leads me on to the position around the land and the stadium. And I just want to be totally crystal clear in terms of what the position is re the land, because I am seeing some conflicting reports, comments that are being made about the land. So the stadium and all the land around it, that is owned by Highland Council / the Common Good Fund. So the club has the lease until 2094 for the stadium, and when I say stadium I mean exactly that. We don't have anything more. We're a subtenant for the circa 9 to 10 acres of land around the stadium, which includes the car parks. Now the head tenant is a company called Inverness Caledonian Thistle Properties, so our subleases with Inverness Caledonian Thistle Properties. That's controlled by Ross Morrison and David Cameron, who are two former directors of the club, as we all know, and that was purchased by them in 2023. These leases run coterminously until 2094 as well. So in simple terms, the club doesn't control the destiny of the land, and the sublease is terminable on quite short notice. So we're in quite a weak position in that respect in terms of security of tenure. Now that I can't hide the fact that's a potential obstacle to the sale, with parties quite understandably concerned that the land could be subject to a change of use, or the sublease could be terminated on relatively short notice. And given where the club sits, securing a major portion of land is important to the club, because it's not a city centre club. The transport links are not great, and also having that land allows the club to then promote non-football revenues, which will be a big factor in the club being successful going forward. What I have done is I've been in touch with the council to say, in these circumstances, if the property company decides to do something different with the leases, i.e. sell them on or look for change of use, that we are notified, which they're duty bound to do, because we do have a sublease and we're a neighbouring party. So I've made it clear to the council that we would expect to see any applications for change of use that may impact the club, which will allow us then to make any representations that we feel are necessary. I did seek to get PropCo agreement from the reading that I had in the books and records of the company to agree to what had been agreed prior to my appointment. Now, that would have been a great assistance to the sale process. However, following the administration, the PropCo position has changed, and their proposal is basically to offer a significant portion of the land to the club or a prospective purchaser. So they're seeking financial recompense for that. It's not fatal to the sale, but it does add another significant cost to any acquisition. Obviously, the offer that was on the table prior to administration would have been good, because it effectively saw a significant portion of the land coming back to the club, which would have allowed us to move forward. I remain committed to try and seek a commercial agreement with all parties involved, and I will also consider what further options around the administration we may or may not have. So that really is the message for today. Happy to take some short questions. I won't be doing any one-to-ones today, but happy if anybody's got any questions, I will try and answer them as best I can, recognising that there may be areas of commercial sensitivity that I can't go into.
Can you quantify what they're asking for the land?
I'm not going to, as I say, disclose sensitive commercial information, but what I will say is what is being asked now is markedly different from what it was prior to administration.
And you're seeking a higher price then?
That would be an obvious conclusion, yes.
Can you clarify exactly which parcels of land we're talking about? Is it the entirety surrounding the stadium, or is it just pockets of it?
I mean, I don't know how au fait everyone is, but there's the triangle in the corner, which is called the Bermuda Triangle. That probably wouldn't form part of any acquisition that the club or a prospective purchaser made, so the Bermuda Triangle potentially would be sold off to somebody else, and then the club would either get back the remainder or seek a sensible commercial deal to buy the remainder.
Can I also ask, you mentioned Alan's made another gesture towards the end of the season. Can you quantify that?
I'd probably rather not, just in terms of commercial sensitivity. I don't think Alan would be overly keen on that. But what I would say is significant and hugely appreciated. Yes. I mean, Alan, is first and foremost got the interest of the club at heart. Just wants to see it survive, which we all do. So again, I'm very, very grateful for Alan's contribution to this.
Could I ask you to clarify and quantify as far as you possibly can as well Ross Morrison's involvement here? Because I followed the document that he issued last week that he's owed in cash 1.65 million. Now, is that in addition to what he has with the land as well? Has all that come together? Is there a 1.65 million debt for which possibly these buildings are security, in addition to his joint ownership with David Cameron at the car park?
Yeah, probably a couple of points to pick up there. So he has a debt owed from the club of 1.65, which is effectively money he put into the club. So that is over and above any interest he has in PropCo, etc. Now, Ross has a floating charge in place, which is obviously publicly available and was disclosed in our report. Which would rank him ahead of most creditors in terms of proposing a company voluntary arrangement. All I'll say on the floating charge is, as I'm duty bound as administrator, it was taken out in a period that we would possibly classify as the challenge period. So it may or may not be a charge that's valid, but we will have that discussion with Ross and his advisors going forward.
So in fact, across maybe the year or two before administration, he was involved in providing 1.65 million, and there must have been some kind of deal as well that necessitated the car parks going to his and David Cameron's ownership.
Well, I can't remember the exact dates as to when he put money into the club, whether it was 2 years or a bit longer, I'm not entirely sure, but in simple terms, when Propco became available for sale, Ross and David bought it. I mean, that's what happened. Whether the club, and I've not seen any evidence to the case whether it did or not, whether the club was ever given an opportunity to make that purchase themselves, I'm not 100% sure from the records that I've seen.
Yeah, I'm just trying to establish how major a player Ross Morrison is here, to the extent David Cameron as well. One final question. In your document, there's a figure of £70,000 against the name of Scott Gardner. Is this money that it's acknowledged that Scott Gardner is owed, or is it money that Scott Gardner is claiming?
Everybody at this stage on the creditors list is just simply their claim. We've not adjudicated on the claims yet, so some will be absolutely 100% correct, some may go up or down, and some may be rejected, so we've not got to that point yet.
You mentioned 15 interested parties. Can you put into perspective how strong the interest is from any? Is there any leading sort of bids or interest?
We've had one offer already, which unfortunately we had to reject because it wasn't going to work. So they've gone away to rejig their thoughts. And as I say, we had a very good call on Thursday with some foreign investors who were one of the parties that said, look, can we see budgets going beyond the end of this season? Because their view is they see it as a long-term project. They say, look, we're not in it for one year, 2 years. We want to be in it for 7, 10 years plus. So that they have a very, very strong affinity with sport. They do, in the country that they're in, they're connected to a lot of sporting institutions. So, and one of them in particular, without saying too much, is has a strong affinity for Inverness. He's visited quite a lot. So that's kind of spiked their interest.
Okay.
Is that being whittled down from, I think it was 28?
Yeah, to about 21, 22 we had at one point.
Because I'm just wondering, I mean, how much of that is based upon your assessment of them, or how much of that is obviously, maybe a chicken and egg scenario with them looking for certain assurances before they sort of make their sort of their bid clear, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to bring as much clarity as we can to the process. We are looking at other options in terms of around the land, etc., speaking to the council as to what is feasible and what's not feasible. So we are working hard in the background to look at all alternative options that might be available. So we'll also keep people advised as that progresses.
Could I just ask one more question? Ross Morrison obviously holds a huge influence over this whole process. How would you describe his level of cooperation and willingness to find a solution?
I've had one conversation with Ross since I was appointed, and to be fair, he's asked for a meeting in January, which obviously I will welcome. Previously I was dealing through his solicitor. Clearly he's got duties as a director to cooperate with me, so I've not had anything yet that I would say has been uncooperative. I'd like to see it move a bit quicker, would probably be the biggest comment I would make. So that's that. I'm very keen that the meeting in January goes ahead.
Thank you.
Have you found the complexities and the sort of the different facets of this role any sort of more challenging than any other sort of administration that you've dealt with?
No, not hugely. Every administration always has its difficulties. Football clubs in particular. I mean, Hearts is a good example where we were dealing with a very maverick Lithuanian owner, so that caused a lot of problems in itself. So, but yeah, I mean, it's nothing that's overly surprised me. I'd like to see all the parties come together and just say, right, let's, you're not going to get everything you want, so let's all sit down and say, right, let's come up with a deal that suits everybody and allow the club to go forward. If people have genuinely got the club's interests at heart, then I think we should be sitting around the table and saying, right, let's just agree something that works for everybody.
When you say that the land situation is a potential barrier, is that just from your experience as an administrator, or have you actually had those conversations with potential?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's totally aware of the situation, and as I say, we're trying to look at alternative options that may work without having to get embroiled in some long-running negotiation, etc.
The battery farm project as well, was a big kind of story and
yes.
linked, but is that completely dead in the water? I know there's various values linked to that as well.
As things stand, I believe it's dead in the water. I mean, obviously I don't control the battery farm position. Whether the owners of the Battery Farm decide to make an appeal, then clearly that's their decision. If they do, I'll retain a keen interest, because if that was successful, then clearly that's another issue that I would want to have clarified.
Just
in terms of where we're at the moment, albeit obviously the club's in administration, you know, would you say things are looking relatively positive within that? You've obviously got the backing from Alan Savage, you've got 15 interested parties.
Yeah, no, I'm, as I said before, I'm optimistic. You know, Alan's given us a great period of stability to iron out all these issues, but I really want to see it moving forward in January in terms of, I would like to get to a preferred bidder status in January with a view to actually putting forward a company voluntary arrangement proposal to the creditors. Again, I'd like to see the land situation sorted out as part of that. If we can't do that, then we might have to look at a slightly different way for the club to exit, but we're working hard on all of those aspects.
There's obviously the January transfer window coming up next month. Is there any chance the club might be out of administration before that process?
No. We've got a minimum notice period of 14 days to call a meeting of creditors for a company voluntary arrangement. So when you factor that in and actually getting a bid in January that's funded, then no, it will be. We won't be out of administration prior to the window.
If a buyer isn't found, the club could exit via a CVA. Is that correct? Or
No, that's if a buyer is found, we would exit through a CBA.
oh, okay. Yeah.
And if a buyer isn't found?
I don't really want to kind of dwell on that. I think William's going to keep positive. You know, I'd be very disappointed and surprised if we can't find a buyer, and there's decent interest there. People are asking the right questions. People seem to have the right background in terms of what they want to try and do with the club.
Is there any of the interested parties that previous experience in football in Scotland, or is that something you can't answer?
I wouldn't want to disclose that. Any other questions? So, thank you all very much. We will keep you advised as to the next one, and have a good Christmas.
Thank you.